Anchors away, my boys. Greetings and salutations, and welcome to Hacker Slash. If you're joining us again, welcome back. Sorry, I didn't see you standing there in the friend zone. If this is your first time listening, welcome to the party. We are a horror movie review podcast dedicated to telling you whether a movie is a hack,
a total joke, a waste of time,
or a slash.
Totally killer, pun intended.
We believe horror is for everyone, and as such, we're rating these movies with the perspective we've gained from our varying walks of life and the flavors of fear we fancy most. My name is Chris. I'm your friendly neighborhood slasher enthusiast. This week I'm joined by the Superfly Space Guy, Mac.
Are you trying to bribe me by dangling a piece of man in front of my face?
And this week we're checking out the latest version of a classic cartoon that has entered the public domain, only to earn its own slasher.
And if you're a patron, you'll also get to hear our B-side at the end of this episode, where we dig into what we would do to some other classic cartoons.
More than 90 years after being introduced to the world in a comic strip, Popeye the Sailor has reintroduced himself to audiences in a new way. The entry follows a growing trend of twisted reinterpretations of public domain characters, and is one of 3 horror titles released in the same year, all centering on the iconic sailor. The other 2, Popeye's Revenge and Shiver Me Timbers, tread very different waters, but this installment aims to blend slasher sensibilities with urban legend atmosphere. The story follows a group of friends who sneak into a long-shuttered spinach factory after hearing whispers of a figure said to haunt the docks and the rustling halls of the plant. A figure once known as the Sailor Man. This week, we're talking about Popeye the Slayer Man. What were you expecting going into this?
I expected this to just be horribly written, horribly acted, with crappy special effects, and overall feeling very cheesy.
Listen, man, that's fair. I mean, when you have what we have with the Pooniverse, of all things, I didn't have high expectations going into this, although I will be the first to admit that I did enjoy the Pooniverse. But I think my problem, Mac, is I get so high on the Pooniverse only to be brought back down by remembering what the mean one was.
See, when you say Pooniverse, all I'm hearing is Pooniverse and not Poo-niverse.
Well,
for some reason, that's how my brain is interpreting that.
You need to fix that because it's the Pooniverse.
Yeah. But this is why I think, these expectations. I didn't even watch Pooh. I didn't watch the Grinch movies. This whole generation of films is just not my thing, I think. And so, I didn't have good feelings getting into this. I saw the trailer and they showed us so much in the trailer. And so I'm thinking this, it's going to be cheese-tastic. Maybe they'll do it on purpose. Maybe it won't be on purpose and I'll be laughing at them instead of with them. But I think once you kind of get past the Popeye of it all, it's actually not that campy. It kind of reads as like a standard 80s sci-fi monster slasher situation. So all in all, it just feels like watching any other slasher movie.
Yeah, man, listen, I think you got to give Blood and Honey 2 a chance. Maybe not Blood and Honey the first one around. I get it. I get it. But Blood and Honey 2? Electric Boogaloo? Fucking great. And also, I'll be the first to admit, I saw Screamboat and it was fucking hilarious. I cannot wait for us to do that episode later this year. I'm not saying whether or not it's fully slash material, but fucking David Howard Thornton as Steamboat Willie, Screamboat Willie, phenomenal. Iconic. And that's the kind of whimsy and joy that I really hoped to feel in this one. Again, my expectations weren't super high because I have to land somewhere in that sweet spot on a scale of Mean 1 to Blood and Honey 2. I haven't gotten to see Peter Pan's movie that happened earlier this year, but watching this one, I found myself torn and in some moments split down the middle because there's a lot in here where I thought, okay, this is kind of fun. And then there were others where I found myself realizing how much it was dragging. And that is a bit of a disappointment. These movies and the makeup of these movies relies on camp and humor to really carry it through, or it needs to be really trim and very specific with what it's doing. And it's not that this movie is forever long. It's just that there's some parts of it where I'm like, okay, we'll just fucking keep it pushing.
They really do take their time in a lot of scenes where they just don't need to take their time. And there's other moments that they kind of just blast through. And so I think they could have flipped things around a little bit here. They had a good pace at the beginning, which is, when you have a character like this, you have to kind of hold off from showing them too much. And that was my disappointment, was we just saw him full costume, fully on display all the time, constantly, just standing there for seconds. A quick flash I'm expecting at the beginning of the movie, but no, from the start, we got to see everything. And so I think they needed to kind of space that out a little bit more, build up a little bit more apprehension, because honestly, he doesn't look good. He's not good to look at.
I agree with you. My biggest disappointment in this movie is the way Popeye looks. And I think the actor who plays him looks enough like a passable Popeye that we didn't need to get quite as much as we got. I feel like there was ways to maybe accentuate his form without doing exactly what we got. And we'll go deep into it in the spoiler zone, but I will say I'm not as bad in this sense as I think you're feeling, because I really appreciated the moments where it did conceal him in the shadows. Yeah, we got him standing there in some moments, but some of the fucking framing was excellent. And there's a lot in there that I think sets itself up well for him being a lurking presence.
That's where they were successful, was when we had those moments. The other moments where we just have him standing there fully in frame in bright lighting, I was like, that should be so much shorter.
Yeah, I don't want to see the pores on that rubber mask.
No, absolutely not. And we were getting, it felt like way too up close and way too bright lighting. But those moments you mentioned where they have him in the shadows in this very dark, unlit warehouse, yes, that's exactly what we're here for. Or those feelings of like, this is weird watching Popeye being a bad guy.
Yeah, let me tell you what else I was surprised with, though. I was surprised how much they committed to the bit with recontextualizing Popeye's lore. That was shocking. This is a movie that is a dumb fucking slasher. They didn't have to take quite the angles that they took. And while it's not perfectly executed by any means, folks, there is the hint of a alleged deeper narrative. There are some angles here that could make you wait and say, if we take off their glasses and let down their hair a little bit, it might look a little bit better in the right light.
They do kind of play into the whole like soap opera-ness of it in several different ways that they didn't need to, but it's also kind of fun that they did.
It absolutely did. And I think that's what really takes center stage for me in terms of this movie's identity. Because, man, there's the promise of something deeper. And it's not that this movie has to be that deep, but I think Blood and Honey 2 is a good example of this, where you have just some fucked up shit happening. And oh, by the way, yeah, there is a through line there. There is a reason why this is the way it is. But I think where this movie both shines and then also gets in its own way is that it tries so hard to commit to the bit. And there are moments where it feels funny. It's like, okay, yeah, you understand how to take this not super seriously. And then it goes, okay, now we're back to being boring. And it just kind of muddles itself. It muddies the waters.
Yeah, they really leaned into it in a couple places with things like the dialogue, even just like the naming of characters, where it was like, hey, we're in on this with you. Both of us are laughing because we get the references. And when they had those moments, I appreciated it. They did stay kind of way too serious for pretty much everything else. And they really had the room to go campy if they wanted to for a lot of the film. And they didn't really go scary. That's for sure, because it's Popeye the Sailor Man in a Slayer Man setup, and that's fine. Accept that fact and just give us a competent slasher, and we'll be happy, I think. But you have to appreciate the context that this is coming from a cartoon character, and so I think a little bit of camp goes a long way.
It does, which is why this sucks in some respects, because there are moments where there's good physical comedy, but it doesn't commit itself quite enough to even really earn a title as a horror comedy. It flirts with the idea, but never commits. It's like it's in a situationship with being a comedy. It's like, will we, won't we? I'll have the promise of it. I'll show you the potential, but we'll never capitalize on it. And, looking at just what this movie is made up of overall, I think it gets points for its concept. It's so fucking out of left field that I almost respect it, because we have, Popeye is a slasher villain instead of the hero, yet we have the spinach canning factory. It's not something that we haven't seen before, but it's unique enough to Popeye that we really can all just step back and say, well, did we fucking see this coming? When was the last time you thought about Popeye the Sailor Man?
And in this context, it's also like a completely random thing. You know, it's something where it's like, hey, 1 + 1 in this case equals 12 and whatever, like, let's roll with it. I'm here to see what happens with that. And they make it different. Obviously, this is based off of Popeye the Sailor Man. And obviously it's going to pay nods to plenty of other slashers. I'm also getting that like 1980s focus on things like toxic sludge.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's that feeling here. It's not quite Toxic Avenger status at all, but there's that feeling here of kind of semi-supernatural, kind of bad guy, yet you know him, and so you don't want to fully hate him quite yet. You want to let him cook. Let's say you want to let him cook. And so like, yeah, it's got its own, you know, little thing going on for it, I guess, which is very unique. I don't know how the other Popeye films are going to compare to this, or if they will, the other ones that come out this year. No idea. But I know this one in particular is kind of standing alone so far.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I kind of want to watch them out of morbid curiosity, but I have a feeling that this is probably the best looking one. I looked at the artwork for Popeye's Revenge, and I am feeling all kinds of fucked up about that. And I was also feeling all kinds of fucked up about the ending of this movie. And here's where I struggle. It's not even that it's a bad ending. It's that it's a mediocre ending. It was really trying its best to do a Halloween Kills moment.
What they did here was kind of weird because they actually had a really decent, simple ending that gave them room to grow if they wanted to. And then they threw on this random bonus bookend scene as just like a worse wrap up than they already had, which was kind of strange. I mean, they got to a point here where it was like, all right, we're at a fitting point to move on to whatever the next chapter is going to be. It's not the strongest, but it's, you know, it's decent. And then they're like, nah, just kidding. We got to copy the front of the film now. Now we have to throw in just another thing just to be silly. It seemed more cartoonish than it had earned by that point.
Yeah, it's problematic at best. And I mean, listen, I feel like I've been very generous with these kinds of movies, but I'm excited to see where we actually shake on this one because I'm still, I think, finding my way with my feelings. But I think it's time for us to go ahead and start making our way towards that inevitable rating. Now, before we actually give our scores, Mac, how would you rate the gore score?
Well, look, we get gore fully in frame. It's not low. It's not the most gore that we've seen. It's not the craziest. So I think it's probably like a Goldilocks medium.
And what about the animal report?
I am happy to report that we are all good in the hood.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Popeye the Slayer Man in 2025. Is it a hack or was it a slash? And I think I'll go ahead and just kick this off because I think I'm finding myself along the way. This is really a journey of my own personal growth. I'm a sucker for slashers. I'm also a sucker for some dumb bullshit sometimes. I can really get into that. And I'm 50-50 on this movie. And I was really 50-50 throughout most of it, because there's a few fun kills that tip the scales. And then if you look close enough, you can just see recycled effects here and there. This movie is not great. And I think it relies on a deeper level of familiarity with Popeye and lore than I think it really deserves to have. I can't remember the last time I thought about fucking Popeye, except for being in the Navy. People make the fucking sailor jokes. But beyond that, I don't know Popeye intimately the way we know the Grinch, the way we know Winnie the Pooh, the way we know Bambi, Pinocchio, even fucking Mickey Mouse. You know what I mean? Like this is a little niche, but it still has a concept that I respect. It has cinematography that I respect. This movie is a dumb movie that's executed technically kind of okay. And I'm struggling because I think it's barely a slash for me. But I want to be very clear. I do not recommend that you make a whole evening in a production out of watching this movie. I think if you have the opportunity to watch this movie with friends and you're into buckle in for a fucking good time and just like talk shit with each other, I think this is a good option. I don't think it's a good only option. I think you should put this in as like maybe the second or third movie in a string of just bullshit. That's where I think this movie can really shine. I may revoke this score at the end of the year, but for now, I had just enough fun with it to make it a slash.
Okay, and I can see where you're coming from, especially this battle of 50-50 could go either way the entire time you're watching it. And I think the battle for me was the silliness of it being Popeye. I think without that, it would have been a quick and easy, maybe like 60% slash. Like, okay, like it's there. It's a slasher. I appreciate what it's got going on. You know, it's got a fairly straightforward setup for the antagonist and almost as equally simple of a plot. The kills are pretty strong. Like you mentioned, there's some recycled stuff here and there. They could have done more. They could have leaned into Popeye and perhaps threw out a few quotes from the cartoons and we would have been okay with it. But it's Popeye. And boy, our Popeye looks bad. Not like bad in a good way, though. I think, like you mentioned, Chris, that the actor playing Popeye needed only a wardrobe change and minor makeup to look the part. We were there. But instead, we got an insanely cartoony do-up instead. It was just strange. The dialogue, though, wasn't quite as campy as I thought it was going to be, and the material really allows for them to go full camp if they want to. That would have benefited our actors because they're doing their best, but they're giving us B-movie performances for a lot of it. I'll give credit to the writing because it actually seemed, fairly okay. Now, thankfully, that was not enough to take me to full hack territory. So I think without it being Popeye, we're looking at like 60%, we're a slash here, about 51% slash.
Wow. I'm going to be honest. I'm a little surprised. I don't know that this movie deserves to be a universal slash. I feel like it deserves to have an asterisk next to its name. But for now, Popeye the Slayer Man has earned a universal slash. But we clearly have so much more to discuss when we return from break. Now, you can find this movie available for rent online. You can find a link to it in our show notes and a link to the discussion about this fucking movie in our Discord server. That's where the real fun is. But go check it out. Then when we return from our break, we're going to dive deeper into the spoiler zone territory and unpack the wild fucking angles this shit tries to take. We'll see you in a bit.
Sometimes you just don't have time to wrestle open a rusty can of greens mid-battle. Let's face it, life moves fast. 1 minute you're shooting an indie documentary, the next you're fending off monstrous mutant sailors, or worse, the estranged child of your missing wife. But with spinach and a snap, you can summon super strength and questionable gastrointestinal confidence in seconds. It's spinach, but sexier. Delivered via drone, catapult, or our patented leaf-in-a-box teleportation technology. It's farm fresh, iron-rich, and FDA-ish approved. Forget meal prep, just press the big green button, flex meaningfully, and bam, you're full of leafy justice. Spinach in a snap, because muscles don't grow on trees, they grow on leaves.
Welcome back, folks. You're now entering the spoiler zone for Popeye the Slayer Man from 2025, which has really lucked its way into a temporary universal slash. And we have a lot to unpack here, but before we get into the specifics of those ratings, let's go through those kills.
We have quite a few kills to get through here. We have 10 of them. We've got limbs being torn off. We have heads being smooshed. Several wrists are broken. And of course, a good old head smash and stomp. So which one was your favorite?
Okay, there's a couple things that I really want to point out here. Like you mentioned, we had the security guard who got the Sartain special and just a head stomp. But I want to give this movie some compliments because this and Screamboat managed to do something that looks way better than a specific kill that I commented on in Jason Takes Manhattan. And that is Miguel's death in the beginning of the movie. It has a death in the shadows, but then when we reveal what happened to him, we have intestines everywhere. And the practical effects on the gore in this movie are not bad at all. And I think that's what bumps it up into that slash territory. They're kind of fun. But, man, those intestines, super gross.
They were really gross, and I appreciate them for, I think, putting a lot of energy into the effects and probably money and time as well, because, that one had a lot going on with it. Some of the other ones where we're just getting the wrist being broken, I was like, we kind of got that. Like, you don't have to do that again. Find a different way to approach this kill, please. But
there was so much copy and paste of the fucking wrist snapping.
That was definitely a negative. That was not in their favor to repeat that particular thing. And I think you can pull from the comics, they do all sorts of silly things where they bop people on top of their heads all the time in the comics. So like, give us one of those, go vertical with that thing and let's see what happens. Cause you got the strength apparently to smash right through somebody's head or right through their guts and open them up.
Yeah. I also want to give a shout out to Terry, Anchors Away. Come the fuck on. When I heard the term anchors away, oh my God, it shot me back to October to December 2008 and having to walk around the fucking station in boot camp singing Anchors away, my boys. Oh my fucking God.
To their credit, they made it a little bit more interesting by not making it a simple one strike. We had to go back for the double tap to fully separate the neck and the head. And that's not what I thought was going to happen. I thought that heavy ass anchor was going to smush that dude's face. And instead he used it to bisect his head from his neck.
Yeah, which I'm okay with, but also, bro, how can you stomp on a guy's head, Zartane special, and then the anchor not do more devastation?
Yeah, that was very surprising. And like the fact that he had to go back for the second swing, I was like, that thing is not that sharp. I'm sorry. That would have definitely just crushed and not cut.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I really also want to give a shout out here to Joey getting what he fucking deserved, beaten with his own fucking arm.
That was, I think, part of the comedy of this movie. And it was like weird because it was not done in a comedic way, but the fact that he just beat on him for a solid minute or two with his own severed arm that he just ripped off of him. I was like, okay, be more campy, be like this. This is what we need from this character in probably, I'm sure, this franchise that is going to spawn afterwards. But beating this douche with his own arm was a great touch, you know, because I think we thought he was just going to do the old smush of his head and put his fingers through his eyes or whatever. But no, he grasped that puppy and just tore and ripped it right off. And I'm like, okay, what's he going to do next? I thought he's going to shove this through his throat or he's going to punch him real fast and be like the Punisher, cave in his face. And no. He just beat him. He beat him silly with the dude's severed arm.
Yeah. Okay. But you mentioned hands, fingers through the eyes. We did have this moment a la Friday the 13th with Jason Voorhees, where he really just sticks the thumbs right through the eyes and then crushes the head.
This Popeye felt very Jason-ish. Very Jason-ish in the kills, in the slow walk, in the quiet stare. A lot of it felt like Jason. I was thinking Popeye is really strong and outgoing. He's very verbal sometimes in the cartoon. So what's he going to be like? I didn't imagine the Silent Stalker was going to be the style of killer that we would get here.
Yeah, I thought that stood out in a way because he was such an interesting blend between some moments of Jason, some moments of Michael, because he has the presence that I think he tries to have the presence that Michael has, the looming in the shadows, lurking in the background, but then the brute force and the utter strength, like the behemoth strength of Jason Voorhees, which is interesting because if you put Michael and Jason up next to each other, Jason, I think, just looks hulking in comparison. But I think that's where I really struggled with this movie. We mentioned it earlier. Popeye looked like complete shit.
Yes.
Sure, the forearms are there. They're big, they're round, okay. But this movie is almost held hostage by its poor costuming for Popeye, which is a shame because there are moments where his frame looks great in comparison to the scenery around him. So we mentioned earlier that shadow work, right? There are scenes that are blocked in a way that elevates what could have just been a very campy costume killer. There are a lot of shots in this movie that actually look fucking great. That's why I think the Red Band trailer for this movie was so intriguing, why I was so excited to watch it, because the cinematography and the lighting really does wonders to make this really shitty costume shine.
Oh gosh, they, I think, went with like a one-piece mask for this dude, and they really should have gone for multiple pieces to augment his face, because like you said earlier, he already kind of matches the build of Popeye, but then they're going to accentuate his arms. I'm okay with it. He's got, the V shape going on here, like a Superman that's too buff almost. That's fine. But the face is where they failed because it's not mobile enough and it just makes it look like a mask. Even though the texture might not be perfect, I think if they went for smaller pieces to give him the chin and to give him the eye slash and all that, like that would have been fine. The whole get up though, when you looked at it, looked like a mask was on someone's face. And that was bad. It was not good. It was not salvageable at that point. So I hope if they do another one, learn from that, make it a little bit smaller scale, accentuate features on the guy's already existing face. Because like you said, visually, the rest of the movie is doing pretty good stuff. I mean, the kills, we've got some really nice solid gore going on here. Whatever's going on with this color of this town, this place is blue and dreary. It is looking drab. Let's just say it looks like a place you get depressed.
It's looking real Twilight.
It's 100% Twilight. I don't think I picked up on that at all, but yes, absolutely. The color grading of Twilight applied to this film.
Yeah, it really fucking did. Okay. But here's the interesting thing here. we had some incredible effects work. We had some incredible Foley. We had some incredible cinematography. We talked about that. I want to throw it back even to our realtor who had some documents drawn up, went back to the factory, is later fucking scalped before she's completely obliterated. What a brutal fucking death she had. But I want you to think of that moment, Mac, and then I want you to remember that there's a point where she is pulling Dexter's sleeve back up from his wound, and the sound design is not matching what's happening on screen. That shit drove me fucking crazy. Like, this movie gets so close to really incredible moments, and then it does some shit that feels real inconsistent.
I don't know if it's an execution issue, if it's a skill issue, if somebody got rushed, if this is what the budget allowed or what, but they have a lot of those moments going on with the production. Like you mentioned earlier, a couple of those shots seem reused. And I think I almost would have preferred it had they done things badly on purpose. You know, when you watch spoof movies and they do things like cut to somebody else's hands in a shot instead of the actual actors on purpose to kind of show how ridiculous something is. They didn't lean into campiness enough, but they had the opportunity to do so plenty. You know, the characters that we get could have really been played out even more. I think Bernie was a perfect example of like,
oh my gosh,
this is what this movie needs because it's so silly, but it's taken in such a serious way. And that's what makes it great. I mean, we talked about Popeye's costume. They could have done more to make that land differently had they just embraced the fact that this is indeed silly. The spinach, though, I'm going to give them credit because they found a way. They found a reason. They found the thing that makes this Popeye exist. And it's silly. And that's why I like it. It gave me Toxic Avenger vibes because it's glowing and it's green and it's tainted or whatever. But that thing where we see it and you're like, oh, it's contaminated with what, uranium? It's ridiculous. And that's why I liked it.
Okay, here's my problem with the spinach. It didn't fucking look good. In a world where you and Sean pointed out how easy it is to make something glow green by getting the fucking glow stick fluid, it's so easy, it was right there. Why the fuck did we do that? We could have gotten some spinach and some fucking glow stick liquid, and I'm sure it would look better than this fucking CGI shit. That it was fucking gross looking. It reminded me of some of the terrible effects that we've seen in some of these other movies that we've done recently, and with this specific one is escaping me. But it's just those moments, those tiny moments where something looks a little bit fucked up and it looks inconsistent with the rest of the scenery. It's not effective. It doesn't win me over. It doesn't sell me on the moment, and that's where I really struggled. Now, I mentioned earlier that this movie had some moments where Popeye even reminded me of Michael Myers. I want to give one last fucking jab at the costume here because, Mac, you remember Halloween 5?
As we all do, I'm sure.
And you remember that Tina had a boyfriend, and Tina's boyfriend had a Halloween mask. It was the Brute mask that Michael Myers puts on at one point. That shit had a fucking protruding ass jaw and then the hollowed out eyes. Granted, I know he looks different. This does really look like a Popeye mask, but that's what it fucking reminded me of, and I could not stop thinking about it.
That is hilarious now that you mention it because I absolutely can see that. Actually, it might have had better definition, I think, that mask, than the one that Popeye wears.
Yeah, it fucking sucks is what it is. But here's the thing. Another comparison, another moment where I really felt some Halloween energy. One, in the very fucking end, where Popeye is looking out from the factory, from the window. It's giving Michael Myers in the Myers house. Another moment, though, was actually my favorite scene. And it reminds me of the seminal hit classic. And by seminal hit classic, I mean the movie that a lot of people shit on, but I love, Halloween Resurrection. Mac, have you seen Halloween Resurrection?
I have indeed. I've seen Resurrection.
Okay, fantastic. Because there's a moment here where we see Popeye on surveillance video. And I fucking love that because it's not just Halloween Resurrection. It's also a little bit of Halloween 2, 1981, where we see Michael Myers walking around on CCTV in the hospital. But there's a point where Popeye walks into view while she's distracted on her phone. Yes, I know it's a classic horror beat. We've seen this in other movies, but it played well and I fucking loved it. And then for her to be sitting at the desk with the fucking monitors and we see Popeye lurking in back of her. And then later she gets up, comes back, and he's fucking there behind the screens. I just like, that was the shit. It wasn't scary, but it was just fucking good. It was fun. That's where this movie shines.
It was fun, and they could have gone even sillier and it still would have worked, especially that shot of him standing clearly in the frame of the security camera or whatever camera it was that they had set up. If you had done something like wave and she was looking away, that would have even taken it up to a notch. So they could have gone more serious, or they could have gone, and it would have worked really well. I think that was just fun seeing him move around and be unseen by all the people in here. I think the other fun stuff I liked, I mentioned Bernie earlier, but Bernie's monologue, both of them, honestly, those were my favorite. And I think his delivery of it is very gruff and very serious and very haggard. And then we realize in this town, he is just like, the bumbling drunk. And they're like, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. And it just moved on from there. And that was great because that type of character exists especially in all these like seafaring tales where there's whatever they are, whether it's vampires or evil fish or something, there's always that person that they flip to, stay off the moors, for instance. And that worked well. And then they made fun of him for it. And then we got the repeat later on where we see the young guys doing the same thing where they're like, shut up, Bernie. And I love it. For some reason, that comedy just really worked for me.
Yeah. I think I struggled with Bernie a bit. Because if he fucking said, he's not a ghost, he's real, one more fucking time. And I think I'm really just a little jaded because there's that guy when I went to Savannah, Georgia, I went on a ghost tour. Because the dead bodies are under your feet. You're standing on dead bodies right now. I'm just so sick of hearing people repeat things over and over again. I think is my struggle. But you know who Bernie reminds me of? Family Guy, the pirate.
I have not watched enough Family Guy.
Wow. Okay. Well, if you look up the pirate from Family Guy, it's going to be super fucking obvious. He's just the fisherman. He had like 2 peg legs and he's just all about some fucking sea shanties and some lore.
I'm just looking at the picture right now and I could see that. And that works. That's kind of the idea, I think, behind Bernie's character. And that's why it plays out so well because we have this nautical theme. We have a sailor man as our antagonist here. And so I think you have to throw in that kind of a character if you want to complete how ridiculous this whole setup is. And I loved it. I think as far as characters go, he was one of the more entertaining ones.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll give you that. I got to also acknowledge, though, that these characters reminded me again how much I fucking hate when people say daddy.
Oh boy.
He said, Adrian, come to daddy. Well, he said it in a more disgusting, sinister way in the beginning of the fucking movie, like when they're herding this woman into this fucking factory. I will never not hate the way men call themselves daddy.
I don't understand anyone calling themselves that unless they're talking to a dog or a child. Those are the only 2 respectable times when you can use that phrase being self-referential. Any other situation there, it's not good.
Yeah, even talking to a dog or a child, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Don't love that.
Yeah. It had several moments where some of the like storylines behind those characters seemed like they were not going to deliver anything and it was going to just be this massive waste of time. That was one example where as soon as they get into it, I was like, just get the kill out of the way, set the tone for the movie. We don't need this whole backstory. And then it was like, oh, they're going in a direction with it. That is interesting to say the least. But later on, we get the same thing when we get Joey just being a jerk. And he's introduced at a point in the movie where it felt like that's completely unnecessary. We've already got the setup. We're already going to head out to this factory. Why do we need this complication? And I think it still paid off though, because they wanted to have someone that we hated and they wanted someone that we could kill brutally and the audience would root for. And it worked. I was like, okay, yep, that's how I feel about this guy. So that is okay. But at the start though, it was like, this is just going to be an unnecessary complication, another little soap opera twist, kind of like they did with the whole predictable thing of Popeye being Olivia's father. I thought he was going to be like the grandfather or something because apparently he's been haunting for however long, but
Popeye has haunted this town for 40 years. Spinach is canned tonight.
They mentioned her name. I never paid attention to the fact that it was Olivia. So I think when we saw the 2 girls who were coming along and I'm thinking, yeah, one of them is going to be Olive. That's what's going to happen. It's going to be like all those movies where she's either, the kind of situation here where she's like the long lost love reincarnated, or I don't even know what they're going to do here, but it's in some case, one of these is going to be Olive. Didn't even think perchance that it was going to be Sweet Pea, and her name is Olivia. And when I realized her name was Olivia, I was like, oh, it was obvious the whole time. That is wild.
As soon as they said Olivia, I was like, oh, well, fuck, here we go. I didn't think it was going to be the Sweet Pea. I thought it was just going to be a Todd and that's how they were going to reference olive oil. And then when we get the badge of olive oil later, we realize that she is Olivia's mother. Okay, go off. I want to actually explore this though, because they could have had a few more references to Popeye we had the man dressed as, I believe his name is Wimpy, who's always looking for some fucking cheeseburgers. And this guy's like kicking him out of the bar saying, we don't fucking sell cheeseburgers on IOUs. We had that. But I think I just don't know enough about Popeye lore to really appreciate everything that they did here.
Yeah, there's small things like that one that you mentioned, the whole cheeseburger thing. That was good. But there's other big things I felt were missing. Bluto is one of them. How can we not have this character in this film, especially when we're talking about Popeye's girl? So I'm thinking, oh, they're saving it. They got to be saving it for later. He had to have kidnapped Olive Oyl or something because both of them are basically missing from this. And that's got to be our chance to get a little bit more Popeye. So who knows if they'll make another one. But I think that was a big one to miss out on. Brutus is another one very similar, I think, that we could have gotten to Bluto. And no, it was just, blank spaces where they wanted to keep it simple, apparently, and maybe leave things open for later.
Yeah, they want the Popeye cinematic universe.
That's what it seems like. I know we have the whole Pooh universe and everything, but, there's a little bit too much room left open here. But they have those small moments where you can kind of tell the namings of things, the naming of the spinach factory, the naming of the town, the naming of the newspaper, whatnot, that I'm like, I know that they're references to the cartoon, but I don't know the cartoon well enough to actually know if it's a good reference or not, or if it means something more than it should. Because let's be honest, it's been a couple of years, since any of us really thoroughly watched this. And at that point, none of us were being that thorough.
You think of Popeye, you think of I am what I am. You think of eating cans of spinach. Okay, King. You think of Olive Oyl, Sweet Pea, maybe Bluto.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's about it though. And this is where, again, I struggle because Olivia had some intrigue as the daughter, as the final girl. There's some stuff there, but I wish there was more for her to do emotionally. I think the foundation was there. I just wish we'd gotten a little bit more of it instead of maybe a little bit less of Joey fucking running around. Now, the thing here is that I can appreciate that they gave us someone to really fucking hate. All right. Joey is one of the big villains in this fucking movie. However, so is capitalism. So is this factory owner. Like, there are a lot of different antagonists in this movie in addition to Popeye. So it kind of, makes crime seem more negligible.
It does. And that's why it's like they're twisting him towards being kind of a protagonist perhaps in the future. He's this anti-hero right now. He's still a villain. He's still killing.
He's basically Zorro.
Well, I mean, basically, aside from all the unnecessary face smooshing. But
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they set us up in a couple different ways here. It's almost a little bit too much. They had that balance the whole time of like, how do we introduce something and not overdo it, especially with characters or plot where they came real close and then they kind of backed off a little bit and kept it simple and it worked really well. Or I should say, it worked well enough, perhaps. But no, I think they went a little short on a couple things. I think we've already mentioned the absolute worst part of this movie, the thing they went the shortest on. Popeye.
Yeah.
And it's the strangest thing where you're like, Popeye the Slayer Man was okay, but Popeye the Slayer Man, the actual character, was horrible.
Yeah, it's really because he's so awful to look at up close. That's the real issue here, because it breaks immersion. If you're dropped into this movie, obviously there's some suspension of disbelief, and there's a journey that you have to take along with these characters to really feel invested in their story. And looking at this guy's rubbery ass mask, and you expect me to believe that he's not just like an employee who dressed up as a mascot for the brand, who is then fucking trapped in this place and is haunting it. No, because that could have been an angle. This could have been a costume angle. But you want me to believe that this man with no eyes, this hollow-ass rubbery mask, is actually a human who was contaminated by radioactive spinach. That's what you want me to believe. Fuck that noise.
There was a way to redeem this that was way more stylistic than I think they went for here. And that is to use that type of aesthetic for other characters like you would see in like Dick Tracy, for instance. We saw something like that happen in Sin City, where we have these exaggerated features and they don't make sense, but it's a bunch of characters. So you see that it's kind of comic, it's kind of cartoonish. Had they had another character or two or three that were of a similar style, I think it would have been a deliberate choice. And we would have seen, oh, that's what they're going for here, these exaggerated things. I think the realtor was the perfect opportunity to show someone as a really ugly, weird, inhuman looking character. That was an obvious choice. I think when we saw Olive Oyl in the photo, give her the same treatment if you want to, but if it's just going to be the one character, it doesn't make sense. You can see that his mouth can't really move. You can see, like you said, that the eye that's missing is just a hollow part in the mask. It doesn't look good. The other one, I'm sorry, but you can kind of tell it's not set correctly because it looks like his eye is too far back inside of the mask and is not forward enough to look natural.
Yeah, I think what Mac is saying is give us the Jim Henson version of Popeye the Slayer Man.
Yeah, that would work. The Who Framed Roger Rabbit really is what I want from this movie.
Yeah, who framed Popeye?
Right, because who dressed him?
Okay, we can make this movie better. Hear me out. Sweeney Todd, but it's Popeye. Because Sweeney Todd, what is he but a man on a quest to find his wife and daughter?
That's honestly perfect. I do have a question, though, because maybe this was a choice for the movie, but I don't remember Popeye wearing white. So it's kind of weird because I'm pretty sure he had a black shirt on.
Well, fuck. I'll be damned. I never once paid attention to what he was wearing in the cartoon. Wow.
I don't think the live action Popeye even went this silly into the character's design. I think it looked just regular.
What a great observation, Mac. I never once paid attention to the color of his costuming.
It's just something I think that catches you off guard because it's so bright white and it doesn't match the aesthetic of like his living space in any way. Like, what is he doing to keep that shirt so bleach white?
Well, that's a great fucking question. Do you think he has any washing machines in there?
Maybe he just takes it out to the water at the dock and does it by hand and then comes back and irons his lines into his shirt.
The sad thing is I'm now looking at men's Halloween costumes of Popeye and they all look better than this movie.
Oh, that's the worst.
Womp womp.
But that's where I think they could have leaned in, like we said earlier, and made it apparent that it was deliberate. Play into the cartooniness of it all. Play into the fact that this is silly. Instead, didn't do it enough. And so now the character reads as just bad.
Yeah, but you know what? Hey, I can get past it enough to throw it on again for a niche watch party or a what the fuck is this horror movie themed night. It has its moments, but I don't think this is like a critical must revisit, but I could absolutely spike this up in the lineup. And if I have someone over who wants to watch some dumb bullshit, this could be on there.
I think that's being pretty generous. I think I was generous enough by giving it a slash. That might be pushing it. I did what I could do by saying that people should watch it, but to do it again, that's asking a lot.
Yeah, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, huh?
I mean, I'm sitting here watching this thinking of the Ginger Dead Man.
Oh, fuck that.
And I don't know if it's because of the warehouse or because of the bakery and how it kind of seems similar. And maybe it's, the Ginger Dead Man was much campier. And I think it's sad that I yearned for that while watching this.
Okay, that does make me sad because the Ginger Dead Man was not a fucking good movie.
That was horrible. This
is far and away an improvement in many categories. And think about the money they saved not casting Gary Busey.
That's worth every penny to not cast Gary Busey as Popeye in this day and age. But we've given it pluses and minuses on both sides. I just hope that if they do more, that they kind of redeem themselves and learn and go firmly in one direction.
Yeah, well, I am excited to see what Shiver Me Timbers or Popeye's Revenge end up spitting out. But for now, there you have it, folks. Popeye the Slayer Man from 2025 has somehow squeaked by with a universal slash. Now, we certainly had a robust discussion here, but it doesn't end here by any means. If you want to find out how you can go further than this specific episode, well, consider supporting the show by visiting patreon.com/hacker/, where you can enjoy more of the show, including some bonus content with early access, extended episodes with our B-sides, movie nominations, and even live shows.
And if you're strong to the finish because you eat your spinach, leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. This helps us to continue to deliver great content for all you horror fiends out there.
We'll see you next time, folks, and remember, he's real.
I am what I am.